they're for small government, whatever it takes, without their consequences. There's, of course, sort of an undertone of racism. They are funded by two brothers, the Koch brothers, that are in the oil business. So, and by now I think the Tea Party has arrived at the Republican base, and they are the energized Republican base that all the candidates try to appeal to, and that's why Romney has such a hard time, because these are the people who actually come out and vote. The Tea Party was the reason why the Republicans turned around Congress 2 years ago, so that's why they think the strategy can be again to use the Tea Party, or sort of use their energy.
No. You're absolutely right about the media. You know, the Democrats have nothing comparable to the conservatives in terms of Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh, and I mean, there's just dozens and dozens of them. And the progressive side, or whatever, MSNBC is about it, and there's really nothing that comparable. So they can just pound their messages every day. And the Republicans also are much more disciplined than the Democrats. So they say, here's the talking points. You will say these words 15 times today. Each of you congressmen, each of you senators go on all the shows, say those words over and over again. And they do. So you just hear it over and over and over again. The Democrats are never that disciplined or organized. And so they can't, I think they do dominate that way. You said about scientific based, I would just say that there's a growing number of Americans, I think, who really just don't believe in science. And they don't believe they think science is not really any different than any other theory. It's just a theory, and so you just interpret it how you want. So they'll use the products of science, iPads and stuff, they're happy to do that. But to say that, well, there's scientific evidence of this, that's already saying, oh, you're just making stuff up. Right? Those are just that's your facts, and I have my facts, and they're all kind of comparable. So that's the really scary part, is that sort of this fundamental questioning of basic ideas like science. Poster. So they're going to find it, and they're going to get it on the air, and so we can maybe overstate the commonness of those views. But yes, I do think there's very little sense of what the actual budget is. Part of that is because it's impossible to understand. It's 1,000 pages and written in gibberish, that no one can read. I mean, it's all written in this lawyer speak. And so we're very dependent upon various interest groups to break it down and tell you what's in there, right? And so they're gonna say it in the way that they want to say it. The idea about keep your hands off Medicare is a really good point. That anything that is a good must not be part of the government, right? And so, or it's seen as almost like a natural right that, and therefore couldn't have come from the government. It almost sort of, it's almost sort of pre. I mean, you're right. There's an irreality to it. But increasingly people have very little association with any sort of government anymore. On the local level, you have it, but on the federal level, particularly since we don't have a draft anymore, and so we have an all-volunteer army that 1% of the population bears all the costs of the war, and post offices. I don't know how much longer you're going to have that around, and that's one of the only sort of federal agencies, other than the IRS, that anyone has any direct contact with on a regular basis. So it just seems this alien thing that doesn't do anything, and they don't see how that works. And our education system is very different since it's all state, or it's all run through the states. You have federal education, but again, there's this sort of sense of what do they do? Education doesn't seem to get any better, so therefore the government education system must be a failure. It is hard to. It is there. There is an irrationality to it, irrationalness to it that does make it hard to understand sometimes.
Yeah, because I read that overhead.
Much bigger impact than I had thought. makes. And I was back in Vienna already, but when I came, when I visited, everybody was talking about it, and I think it really shifted the conversation, and it really helped to frame the Obama campaign for the next couple of months. When you look at the State of the Union speech in January, his frame was a frame of equality, and obviously the president can't support these can't support the Occupy movement directly, but I think it was a good sort of stepping stone for him to paint this frame of everybody has to pay his and her fair share, especially when you then look at Mitt Romney, the presumptive nominee, who has a tax rate, despite being a millionaire, has a tax rate lower than most people in the middle class. So I think by painting that frame and by sort of talking about equality, he also reframes Romney as not paying his fair share.
Can I come back to the sort of puddle of reflex of anti-Washington and anti-national, which reminds me of our Austrian reflex towards Vienna, of the rest of the provinces, and of the Austrian reflex towards Brussels, because it seems all politicians play the same game. Any unpopular measure are blamed on the central government, or in our case, either on Vienna or on the EU, whereas, of course, nothing happens without the national representatives deciding on it. But at home, they sell the good things as their merit. And it seems to be a similar game in the United States.
Right, and so the internet and stuff brings in, allows for other spaces of news. Now you have to seek it out to some degree, but during the Arab Spring and things, I mean, there were people that were finding out that information first from new media, and national broadcasting is essentially disappearing. And newspapers are basically disappearing, except on the local level. So
is public radio, public television, that's still
public radio is pretty solid, I would say.
Okay.
Public television, has less influence, but it, I don't think it's going anywhere. But it's a fraction of what you would get in a European context.
I think, yes, new media has definitely changed, but the question is, has it changed the media landscape for the better or for the worse?
Yeah.
And I mean, there are two theories, and I wouldn't, I can't commit myself to one of them, but one with Kes Sunstein, he says, sort of, on the internet, you basically seek out only information that agrees with you, and so you only look at news sources that don't contradict your worldview. And the other theory says that yes, the online makes sort of the discourse more elaborate. And I think both is true in a way. I think it already happened with TV. Yes, there is Fox News. Yes, there is MSNBC. If you look at the numbers, though, really Fox News, I mean, Glenn Beck in his peak had like 2 billion viewers. So not that many, but he still was sort of part of, I think he coined the public discourse despite having so low numbers. So yes, I think the media landscape has shifted quite a bit. And yes, if you want to, you find the information, but it's on you to find the information. That's the hard part.
Yeah.